it begins, the market is actually starting to collapse. We're seeing things like 0% on 72 months. A lot of these deals now in September of 2025 are clear indications we haven't seen anything like this for quite some time. For example, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, 0% for 72 months. Plus they're giving you an extra $1,000 off, and that's without even trying to negotiate. On top of it, we're not even at the peak time. Everybody knows that the year end is when a lot of these manufacturers really start stepping up their incentives. They know that they've got to try to get a lot of these cars punted off to the next buyer because the next generational year starts. So as we're hitting right now the year end, the next generation, so the 2026 model years are starting to roll in off the trucks. But these are clear indications that things are not doing all that well in the industry, and it kind of serves them right. I mean, buyers have been getting screwed since 2020 when a lot of people were stuck at home. A lot of people started, reaching out there. Granted, a lot of times people like to grab the next shiny toy, and, cell phones and cars are the next shiny toy. A lot of times people didn't need it. They just bought it because they wanted it. But lo and behold, suffice it to say, the government was throwing money out left, right, and center, and people were taking it. And they were buying boats and quads and Sea-Doos and Ski-Doos and cars and new SUVs and trucks. But of course, that combined with the fact that you couldn't get chips and modules in cars meant that you had this sort of collision of different markets, meant that supply and demand have sort of done a topsy-turvy that we haven't seen in years. And it meant that you couldn't get a new car, or you had to wait a year, 2, 3 years to get your new hybrid vehicle, for example. I've even seen some brand new modern vehicles that don't have certain features because they actually rationed some of those chips and put them in the higher trim level vehicles to try to sell those vehicles were higher margins rather than the lower trim vehicles. They know they don't have the margins. They kept things simple. But you know what? I've been looking here, latest deals, the 0% APR deals, according to Cars Direct, are showing what's really telling to me. And what's really telling is this is the result of people either running out of money or just getting sick and tired of getting hosed by these dealers. Now, yes, cars are still selling and they're still moving metal, but it's some false numbers, because while a lot of these manufacturers are going to tell you numbers are rosy, things are great, they're going to tell you we've sold more trucks than ever, or, things are great, we're selling vehicles like there's no tomorrow. If you watched my video just recently, I talked about why certain manufacturers are still selling, and Hondas and Toyotas and Lexus, because when you convert the US inflationary increases from, say, 25 years ago, we actually find Toyotas and Lexus vehicles, with Toyota specifically, are actually below the year-over-year inflationary increases. So in other words, they're actually being more fair to the consumer. Hence, people see the value and they're okay paying what they will pay for that new Toyota. So that's why market day supply is quite low on vehicles like Toyotas and Lexus and Hondas, and why a lot of those don't need to be incentivized. Their value speaks for themselves. The reliability is there. The value in terms of price is there as well. And people have no problems walking in and they're slapping down their pay, and basically paying full sticker. I mean, you should always negotiate. I'm never here to advocate just pay over sticker or even at sticker. Always try to get a deal. But the point is, the value of a new Honda or Toyota is far better than what we're seeing in Stellantis and what we're seeing in GM and even Tesla and a lot of these other vehicle brands. And I'm going to give you some examples because I truly believe in the last 2 to 3 years, customers have been getting screwed. But it's time for the customers to turn the screws to the OEMs. And this is what I'm seeing. People speak and vote with their wallets. People are done getting hosed. And now what you have is a scenario where a lot of these manufacturers are really starting to dig in and try to throw all these deals at you. And now, well, some of these are great deals and some of them are more just superficial. You've got to remember, 0 APR over 60 months, usually their cash price is still going to be, extraordinarily high. The real win is that in some of these is getting discounts, X amount of dollars off, which probably still doesn't cover the massive increases that some of these vehicle brands are throwing our way. And a lot of these OEMs just clearly are gouging at an unprecedented number, at least since the last 4 or 5 years. But these are classic indications, and you'll see a common trend here. And I'm not going to share, these aren't necessarily to go out there and buy these vehicles. I'm using these manufacturers as a clear example of not necessarily what to buy, but the fact that they're incentivizing so strongly because they're not selling. That's the message here. These cars that I'm going to share with you are not selling very well. And that's why these OEMs are giving you 0% on 60, 0% on 72 APR, 0, 0, 0, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 down. You wait till the year end rolls around. Then you're really going to see crap hit the fan, because that's when they're going to be throwing numbers $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 off and 0 for 72 or even 0 for 84 months. You watch, those are coming. But these are indications as to manufacturers that are basically flailing and they're on the verge. And buyers are saying, we've had it, we're done. Here's one, for example, the 25 Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross. They're now offering up 0% for 60 months. But Mitsubishi has been riding around on Nissan's coattails for a while. Mitsubishi, I can't even believe they're still around, in the North American market. It's actually quite humorous. But they're not doing all that well, to be honest. And they're saying, well, the national offer ends September 30th. But let's be honest. These deals never really end. They're always ongoing. There's gets you in the office, get you in the desk to try to pay for that. Another one, Mitsubishi Outlander Sport, same story. 0% for 60 months. And what they're doing on, say, a $35,000 vehicle, you might end up, that might translate to about $4,600 if you run it out to its term. Typically on a 5-year term, when you're paying 4.99, this 0% can save you probably in the equivalent of almost $5,000. Now, is that a huge amount? Well, it's not bad, because the Outlanders aren't that extravagant anyway. And so that could equate to something like 15-20% off of, the regular price. Here's a brand that should be of no shocker. And we know that Nissan is struggling in selling their products, and they're just trying to move metal right now just to stay afloat. And the Nissan Rogue is really only sold on the premise of high incentives. And this continues. For 2025, Nissan, 0% for 60 months. That's right, 5 years, 0%. Some trims have an extra $1,750 off. They're saying it ends in September. They're always an incentive on Nissans, but let's put it this way. What you're looking at is, say on a $35,000 Rogue, the limited 2.9% on 5 years, that could be the equivalent of paying another $2,600 to $3,000 per transaction. So you're saving a little bit of money there, and Rogues aren't crazy money anyway, but instead of spending $30,000, it might be closer to spending $31,000 or $32,000. So it starts to make a little bit more sense. That said, you've always got to negotiate cash deal, get some dollars off of there. There's another one. See, this one's even more telling, and we know that Ford has struggled with the sale of their F-150 Lightnings and their Mustang Mach-E's. They're just not selling this crap. Nobody's really buying them unless they're heavily incentivized. Now, that said, there's a lot of these, these federal tax credits that claim that you can get some money off. That may not come. That, in Canada, it went away, then it came back. US, it might disappear or it's gone altogether. So some of these tax credits may or may not be beneficial anymore. But what Ford now is doing is offering $1,000 retail bonus cash off and 0% for 72 months. 72 months, 6-year term, and 0%. I mean, that's actually a pretty good deal if you're going to spread that out over that time frame. The downside is, okay, you're not losing, and the negative equity is not hitting you as hard, because then you're not paying bank terms on that. You're not paying loan and interest charges. But there is still a reality of heavy depreciation. These cars fall off a literal cliff. So when you look at the depreciation numbers, you could still be underwater even after 5 or 6 years, even paying 0 interest. So just be careful. Mustang Mach-E, they're going up to 0% in 6 years. Same thing with Nissan Murano. Same thing we saw in the Rogue, 25 Muranos, 0% for 60 months. And okay, they're saying it's their best deal ever on the Muranos. We know that restyles come out. And so if you felt like you want to get in a Murano, the thing is, they've changed things up with a torque converter auto, but they still run in VC engines. And so Reliability still will be a bit of a problem, I believe, in the Muranos. That said, you're looking at 0% for 5 years. That could, in fact, translate to, on a $50,000 Murano, that could translate to, over $7,500 versus the kind of typical 6.9 or 7% interest that they're going to willing to charge you. Murano now is a vehicle that you could actually save $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000 off that base price if you happen to take your loan term out of, say, for that 5 or 6 years. So some good deals there, but remember, they're only going to get more desperate. And this is very telling what's going on in the market. All these OEMs are struggling to sell metal. See, back 2 or 3 years ago, you didn't get incentives like this. The percentage of the amount of that transaction was very low that was incentivized because a lot of these people were overpaying market adjustment fees, paying over sticker, and honestly, dealers were being coy and they were trying to charge every which way from Sunday, and people were just paying it. See, we were a part of our own problem here. We couldn't get out of our own way, and we were paying what the dealers were asking and then some. But people are sick of it now. They're done. People are broke. I mean, there are people buying. Of course there are. There's always people buying, and I know in the comments, some of you are saying, oh, nobody's broke. People are broke. If you're not one of the broke ones, consider yourself lucky, because there's a lot of people right now struggling just to have a dinner, struggling just to buy a new pair of shoes, struggling just to put gas in the tank every week to get to work. That's real. That's happening. I mean, just the proof is in the pudding when we start looking at some of the repossession rates. Homes are getting repossessed by the banks. Cars are getting repossessed. Repos are up. And that's another big indication that we're seeing repossessions up in that 7 to 8% on subprime, and even up to 3, 4, 5% on prime type borrowers. Now, that being said, the Nissan Pathfinder, which I believe is one of their better products. Again, Nissan, they were kind of problematic for a while. They finally brought in a torque converter auto. They brought in a 3.5 liter V6. I truly believe this is a little bit better of a product for Nissan these days, but they're not selling anyway. It's the whole reputation of reliability is kind of caught up. So 0%, 60 months. And with that said, if you follow your typical interest rate of 4% on a $45,000 vehicle, that could translate to roughly a $6,000 discount on that vehicle. Here's my recommendation with a lot of these is wait it out. Wait it out, because the year end it's going to get even juicier. But these are all indications. When they're hungry, they're starting to throw incentives. And that's one of the big indications. A 2025 Volkswagen ID4, they're not selling. Nobody wants, nobody cares. One of the worst, just pathetic sellers. 0% for 72 months, 6 years, 0%. And they're saying, based on that, along with that standard $7,500 lease cash offer, that's about $9,300 in savings. Certain states have even better discounts, but the bottom line is you're getting discounted a significant amount, and that discount could translate to thousands of dollars, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 off just by taking them on their 72-month 0% APR. 25 Infiniti QX60, another big loser. Lonesome loser, another indication. Wow, you'll have to give up $8,000 to get it, the 0% or 60 months. I just say, go in there and start kicking tires, because they're desperate. They're saying you can only have one or the other. But these Infinitis are not selling, just like Nissan. So I would go in there and negotiate off the bottom line first, and then negotiate on your interest charges, of course, which would be the 0% APR over 60. This, of course, Infiniti is offering $8,000 retail bonus on all versions of the QX60, and on a $60,000 SUV, we estimate that 0% financing could save you about $2,000, assuming comparable at 7% rebate. So it's kind of like you take the $8,000 or the $2,000 and get the 0%. I mean, take your pick your poison. But at the end of the day, a lot of these vehicles are not selling. Nissan Infiniti, not selling. GMC Hummer EV, 0% for 60 months. Nobody's buying these. even with the federal tax credit, they exceed $80,000 price cap. I know in Canada you're going to be stuck paying luxury taxes on top of it, so they're a harder sell here. Nissan Leaf 0% for 72 months. You see a common thread here? You're getting a lot of these, there's definitely products from Nissan Infiniti are one of the big ones, but there's others, electric vehicles, 0% for 72 months, or a $7,500 rebate may be a better deal. You can take that $7,500 cash off, or take the 0 for 72. I mean, kind of take your pick. It's better if you have cash, you have better negotiations there. But the Leaf is not doing well. And, with a $7,500 rebate and assuming a 7% interest rate, the EV could cost $27,619. The Leaf remains ineligible for a federal tax credit. It makes the rebate especially valuable. So if you really want to have one, apparently the tax credit's a no-go. But enough about that garbage. Nissan, we know they've been struggling. What about the trucks? Well, a Cybertruck, 0% 60. They're offering some discounts. And Tesla has been off the road. You know what? We've seen other YouTubers chat about the fact that Tesla Cybertruck sales have gone in the literal toilet. I know somebody who put that, for interest deposit. There was a $1 deposit to show some interest in the future Cybertruck. I had somebody, a friend of mine that actually had done that. They put down $1 to show some interest. Then more press came out, more rhetoric, more discussions and the costs and the looks. And next thing you know, he sort of retracted. He said, I'm good. And I think that's what ended up happening. There was a lot of people that initially showed the interest and then decided after, yeah, no, I'm good. Price is high. The thing's weird looking by a lot of people's standards. Some people love it. A lot of people don't. But here's one that's clearly going to hit really, really hard. And we see this. We know the brand is struggling. Stellantis, the 2025 Ram 1500. They're just trying to pitch those down the road. Those are struggling for sales. Anything, Jeep, Ram, Dodge, Chrysler. Chrysler, I can't even believe they're in the business. Jeep, they're holding their own. Jeep and Ram are the only two parts of Stellantis that are really doing their own. Fiat's okay in Europe, but in North America, they're pretty much gone, almost toast. 0% for 72 months for a new Ram 1500. It can also be stacked with a 10% off promo. So they're really hitting the incentives hard. Knocking 10% off that tag, giving you another 0% 72 months, and you wait till the year end rolls around. You wait until some of these vehicles are still sitting on the lot. I've seen these. I've seen Rams 23s, 24s, and 25s. Of course, not a lot of 23s, but there's the odd kind of flunky out there that nobody wants. And there's still some cars that have gone through a couple of birthdays already and nobody's buying them. So Ram is struggling on sales. So they're already stacking and smacking and giving you 10% off, 0 on 72. And it's pretty clear to me that even with the previous rate at 1.9% on a $50,000 truck, that equates to about $3,000 off. But we know that 50 grand barely gets you in the door for a Ram. Most likely you're in the 80, 90, 100 territory. Now you're looking at something at $100,000, 10% off is 10 grand off. On top of that, you're at 6 grand. Now you're at $16,000. So that $100,000 truck might cost you more like $84,000, $85,000, $83,000. So a pretty sizable discount, but it's not over. Those discounts are building. And we know by the year end, when they're still holding on to 23s, 24s, and some of these 25s, they're going to be extremely motivated to punt those out the road because the 26 are coming in, and Stellantis has been really struggling with sales. So that said, my recommendation, even if you're in the market, wait it out. These incentives, they may come, they may go, but there will be more as we round out the year. We know that. I've been telling you this for years. I've been in the market for forever and 3 days. Yes, I've been in the car business for a long, long time. And take it from me, I've seen these ups and downs, these ebbs and flows, these ebbs, these flails and sales, and these dealers, they're starting to get a little bit of their own medicine. I just hate to say it. This is not uncommon, the idea of incentivizing at tougher times. This goes on. And when a lot of these OEMs like Ford and GM are bragging that they're maximizing their sales, they're getting they're hitting these targets for numbers of sales, the profitability's not there between tariffs, between reduced, more increased incentives drops their margin, as well as the frontline worker, the input costs like labor costs. Their profits aren't quite what they were, but you know what? That's on them. And those, at the end of the day, buyers don't care. All buyers know is that we're paying way too much because manufacturers like Ram have gone nuts with their price increases over the last few years. And I showed you that on that video previously about what's going on with this last 25 years, this inflationary increase based on the US numbers, that while Toyotas and Lexus or Toyotas and Hondas have gone up below the average inflationary rate, these guys have gone way above, far exceeded the average inflationary rate increases year over year in the last 25 years. So it's clear that they're really taking advantage of the consumer. How do they get away with it? Well, people allow that. But people are starting to speak with their wallets, and this is a sign of the times. Yes, I truly see the market starting to collapse. Things are crumbling, and honestly, it's just a matter of time. Wait for the end of year if you're actually thinking about buying. Ultimately, this thing's only going to get shakier with some time. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Thanks again. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.